So next, let's construct this dividend yield in the historical daily table. So we click on that table and we again introduce a new column. And I'm going to paste this text code here. And again, this is quite similar to the PE ratio we constructed before, because we're utilizing the price information in historical daily table and the dividends per share information retrieved from the cash flow table, which is a quarterly table. Okay. So we're going to define this dividend yield again in several steps. So the first step, we're going to use the index function, which we are already familiar with. So first of all, index function is going to work on this historical daily table, and we're going to make sure this table is identified by the stock symbol and this date adjusted EOM. Okay, recall we don't use the date field because there might be a mismatch between, for example, the last trading day of a quarter might not be the last calendar day of a quarter. So in that case, if we use the date field, then the historical daily table cannot be matched with the last calendar day in the quarterly income table or the quarterly cash flow table. So that's why we construct a new data field called date adjusted EOM, in which the last trading day of a month is going to be changed to the last calendar day of the month. So when this when we match the historical daily to the financial report data, like the cash flow or the quarterly income table, then based on this last calendar day of the month or the quarter, we can make sure there will be a match in the financial report tables. So that's why we have this date adjusted EOM. So basically, historical daily is identified by stock symbol and date adjusted EOM, and then we partition this historical daily based on stock symbol and the year quarter. Okay, and lastly, within each partition, within each stock symbol and that particular quarter, we're going to rank those trading days ascendingly. All right, so this is done by this order by clause. So after this, basically the historical daily table is sorted in a format where we have each partition being a stock in a particular quarter, and within that partition we have trading days sorted ascendingly. Okay, once we have this first partition, we'll sort it. We have the second partition again sorted based on the trading days. So the entire table is sorted that way. So that makes it very easy to retrieve certain rows from that table. Okay, and here again we are constructing a calculated column called dividend yield. So we're relying on the current row context to provide us with the information we need to process the data. So the current row context will tell us what stock we are working on and what particular date we are working on. Okay, and based on that information, we will know what our current partition is. Current partition again is determined by the stock symbol and the year quarter related to the current stock and the current date. Okay, so based on the current partition of a certain stock in a certain year quarter, we're going to retrieve, the first argument says we're going to retrieve the very last row in that partition. So for example, if we're working on Apple stock in a certain trading day in the last quarter of year 2023, then this -1 means we're going to retrieve the very last trading day in that quarter. Okay, and of course, because here this date adjusted EOM already converted the last trading day to a last calendar day. So basically here we're basically retrieving the last calendar day of that quarter related to the current stock. All right, so this is going to be stored in this variable I, basically the last calendar day of the current quarter for the current stock, which is just one row, okay, stored in this variable I. The next step, we're going to work on this variable I using the max function, and we're going to retrieve a related data field in the quarterly cash flow table, okay, and that field is going to be this dividend per share last year. Okay, so basically based on the last calendar day of the current quarter for the current stock, we're going to retrieve the dividend per share in the last year prior to this current quarter. Okay, because the historical daily and the quarterly cash flow table are connected, there's a relationship set in the data model. So we use the related function to make sure we're using the same kind of date and stock symbol to retrieve a matching information from the quarterly cash flow table. Okay, so after the second step, we take the third step, in which we'll just take the adjusted close from the historical daily table based on the current row. Okay, again, based on what stock we're currently working on and what date we're currently working on, we're going to get the corresponding adjusted close price. So lastly, well, this adjust close price is stored in this variable P. So P stands for price. Okay, the dividends in the last year is going to be stored in this variable D, stands for the dividends. So the dividend yield is basically defined as the dividends paid in the last year divided by the current price. So in the last step, we're just doing this division. Okay. However, before we do the division, we need to make sure, okay, if the price turns out to be a blank value, so we use this isBlank function to decide whether the P is a blank value or not. Sometimes there's might be a data error, so P is recorded as blank. Okay. In that case, if this condition is true, then this function is going to just return a blank value. Okay. If this condition is false means that the price is not a blank value, then we're just taking this ratio, basically divide the dividends paid in the last year by the current price, and this entire thing is stored in this value called this variable called DivY. Okay, standing for the dividend yield. So basically here we use the if function. If function will judge a condition, and based on whether this condition is true or not, it's gonna return either a blank value or the ratio between the dividends and the price. Okay, so finally this variable DivY is returned as the final result for this dividend yield field. Okay, so that's how this definition works.